Welcome to the deep dive. If your feed feels less like information and more like an overwhelming fire hose, we are here to distill that chaos into pure, high-octane insight. We take your sources, dig deep, and tell you what really matters.
Today, we're synthesizing a stack of sources that they really reveal a stark systemic division that's shaping the future of artificial intelligence.
A division.
A huge one. It's this unsettling truth that the AI revolution isn't uniform. It's actually splitting into two very distinct, fundamentally different platforms.
In what way? Like capability, access?
All of the above. Capability, access, and, governance.
And our mission today is to give you a shortcut to understanding that split. We want to move beyond that standard narrative of AI is everywhere to really examine who controls the most powerful technology and, I guess, what they're using it for.
Exactly. We've identified two tiers. The first one is the one you probably interact with every day. The sources call it public AI. This is the carrier wave of democratization. It's affordable, maybe $20 a month. And it offers some really great tools for productivity.
Like drafting emails, summarizing long documents, that kind of thing.
Yeah, generating simple images, maybe helping you debug a little bit of code. It's useful, it's approachable, and it operates essentially in what the sources call the stock room.
The stock room. I like that. So what's the second tier, the one that really defines this deep dive?
That would be the elite AI. This is the proprietary intelligence. It's closed off, accessible only to governments, massive corporations, and, the ultra-wealthy. Our sources call this the engine room of concentrated power.
The engine room versus the stock room.
And the difference is purpose. Public AI is for mass productivity, for entertainment. Elite AI, on the other hand, is being explicitly developed and deployed for these high-stakes, transformative, and frankly, often controversial applications.
How controversial?
One source defined it chillingly as being used for killing, gambling, spying, and selling.
Wow, okay, so that's a pretty stark difference.
It is. And here's the core narrative anchor that really ties all these threads together, these elite, powerful systems. They're controlled by a very, very small handful of people.
A hand?
They oversee what has been ominously referred to as the God computer, or maybe more descriptively, the country of geniuses in a data center.
A country of geniuses in a data center. That's quite a phrase. It sounds like a sovereign state of intelligence, but privately owned.
That's a perfect way to put it. So our deep dive today will systematically unpack the evidence for this division. First, we'll look at the capability gap. I mean, why is the public version intentionally lagging?
Yeah.
Second, the massive economic chasm that dictates who gets to play. Third, the opaque black box governance structures being adopted by the state.
And finally,
the ultimate threat this concentration poses to democratic agency, the rise of what the sources are calling algocracy.
okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the simple, slightly alarming reality that what you are using for your daily tasks, even the expensive subscription, is likely several steps behind the best tool available right now.
This capability gap is the most immediate insight from the source material, and it really is the definition of that stockroom reality we mentioned.
So we're seeing consistent evidence that the AI models the public uses are strategically held back.
Several steps behind the internal state-of-the-art.
Yes.
Almost unsettlingly calculated.
It's not just a slow rollout then, it's more like a deliberate market segmentation.
Exactly. It's built around capability obsolescence.
Yeah.
You're buying the new model, but the company already has, 3 generations of prototypes locked away in the back.
Right. And one source pointed directly to large frontier labs, right? Claiming that something like GPT-5, when it's released to the public, is reportedly not the best version that a company like OpenAI has.
Not at all. That best version is kept securely in its stockroom.
So why? Why keep the best version private? The sources must have a reason.
They point to 3 main things: liability, control, and of course, market strategy.
Okay, liability makes sense.
I mean, think about it. If they release Model C, which is truly super intelligent and maybe capable of serious harm or unexpected autonomous behavior, the liability exposure is immense.
So they release Model A instead.
Right. They let the public vet it for safety and alignment problems. That's they're using millions of users as a massive free beta test.
So we are paying $20 a month to be the testers for the less powerful, more controlled version.
That's the intelligence lag in a nutshell. The argument is that at the very start of this whole LLM explosion, the gap might not have been so pronounced. But today
it's different.
it is. While the public models are undeniably getting smarter month over month, they are not the cutting edge. They're safer for the company and maybe better for the average consumer, but they are not the state-of-the-art that the internal research team or those select elite partners are leveraging.
And the consequence of this lag is huge, especially for economic value. Our sources stress that the true state-of-the-art, that model tucked away in the stockroom, is what's coming for your cognitive value.
It's the version designed not just to summarize your email,
But to fully replace high-level cognitive labor, things like legal research, complex coding, strategic planning, that version is already far ahead of the one we're paying for.
which is why we're hearing these persistent calls from experts and researchers outside of the big labs for much, much greater transparency.
They want to know what's really going on behind the curtain.
They want to ensure there isn't a giant gap between the internally and externally deployed models. I mean, if the public and the scientific community are rigorously testing Model A for safety and ethics,
But the core developers are simultaneously integrating a much more powerful Model C into critical infrastructure,
the entire oversight framework just collapses. It's a blind spot the size of a data center.
which raises the terrifying question: who is getting access to Model C, to the true God computer candidate?
Well, the evidence points directly to powerful entities, the elite tier. We see claims of much smarter versions of AI being explicitly accessible to groups like AI super PACs.
Super PAC, so political lobbying groups.
Exactly. These are groups that funnel massive, often non-transparent political donations to shape AI policy. And they apparently have privileged access to capabilities that are just unavailable to the average person or an independent researcher.
I think we need to make this capability difference really tangible for you listening. The public's perception of AI capability is often shaped by its failures, right?
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
when you see a chatbot get a basic logical riddle wrong, that famous one, the Sally has three brothers problem. When a public chatbot fails, we all kind of laugh and think, oh, it's not that smart yet.
And that public perception is very carefully managed by these stockroom models.
Yeah.
The internal models, the ones in the engine room, are capable of far more complex, long-horizon tasks. They're engaging in what we call agentic tasks.
Okay, let's define that because it feels crucial. What exactly is an AI agent, and what can it do that a typical chatbot can't?
A standard chatbot is reactive. You give it a single prompt, it gives you a single answer. An AI agent is proactive and strategic. It's defined as a system capable of completing arbitrarily long tasks,
Arbitrarily long tasks.
meaning it can break a massive goal into sub-goals, execute them sequentially, learn from its failures, use a bunch of external tools, and even modify its own plan without needing explicit human direction at every single step.
So if I ask a public chatbot to say, summarize these sources and draft a 500-word intro, that's a standard task. What would an agent do?
An elite agentic system would handle a task like this. Build a functioning e-commerce website that optimizes SEO for luxury alpaca socks and handle all customer service inquiries for the first month.
Whoa.
And the agent would proactively register the domain, write the code, select the best images, set up payment processing, write the marketing copy, build a full-stack database, all of it autonomously.
So it's not just answering riddles, it's optimizing entire business workflows. It's acting like a fully delegated, independent digital employee.
That distinction, a reactive tool versus a proactive workforce, it fundamentally changes the economic implications.
And this brings us to a key tension in the industry, this efficiency paradox and the role of open source tech. I mean, companies like Google and OpenAI have to burn the GPU years, right? Spending hundreds of millions of dollars just to pre-train these huge models.
And that creates a narrative that capability must equal scale, and scale must equal massive, concentrated investment.
But there's another path, isn't there?
Well, the hopeful direction, at least academically, is that once a model is trained, it can be mathematically distilled or pruned. You basically remove redundant parts to run efficiently on a single laptop or a smaller GPU.
What we call the edge.
Right. And that would genuinely democratize AI.
But the concern raised in the sources is that these big companies might be deliberately maintaining the scaling approach to monopolize the technology.
That's the fear. By making the only viable path, the one that requires astronomical compute, the hundreds of billions needed for infrastructure, they are effectively locking out academia and smaller players who are compute-starved.
So it's an intellectual property lock, but it's enforced by capital expenditure.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And this structural lock is really being challenged by a fascinating counter-narrative, often highlighted by innovation coming from places less concerned with maintaining this high compute arms race, specifically from China.
Tell us more about the China case, because this sounds like a truly revolutionary finding from the source material.
So the sources highlight that Chinese companies who were constrained by fewer resources, partly because of U.S. export controls limiting their access to cutting-edge chips, they were forced to innovate in model efficiency.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
And they were able to develop the same level of AI capabilities as American companies using 2 orders of magnitude less computational resources.
2 orders of magnitude, that's 100 times less.
100 times less.
Yeah.
1/100th of the GPU time the energy that costs.
It fundamentally challenges the dominant Silicon Valley narrative that only absolute unlimited scaling leads to the state of the art. It suggests the current American model is incredibly wasteful.
It points to inefficiencies in the underlying transformer architecture used by the frontier labs, or maybe just extreme data inefficiency. These Chinese labs found ways to leverage sparse models, new training optimization techniques, novel architectures.
And it worked.
It drastically lowered the running cost, allowing them to achieve inference costs as low as 10 cents per million tokens. That made their models 130 times cheaper to run than comparable Western models.
Wow. So this scaling arms race, this massive spending spree, it might not actually be about achieving a breakthrough capability that couldn't be achieved otherwise.
It might fundamentally be about maintaining a financial and structural monopolistic advantage.
Preventing anyone else from even entering the country of geniuses.
That's the critical takeaway from this section. The capability gap isn't just about what's possible, it's about what's controlled.
And that structural control, achieved through massive capital investment, leads us directly into the second major division, the economic barrier. The financial chasm here dictates who moves from using a stockroom tool to leveraging the engine room's raw power.
And we can quantify this cost divide pretty starkly. The public is accessing what were termed clunky Phase 1 consumer products, the reactive chatbots, for around, $20 a month?
Right, an individual utility cost, like Netflix or Spotify.
But the truly powerful agentic systems, the ones designed to automate massive workflows, the ones being tested by elite organizations, by the country of geniuses in the data center, they cost dramatically more.
How much more?
We're talking prices between $1,000 and $10,000 a month.
$1,000 to $10,000 a month. That's not a consumer product.
No, this is a signal that we're entering an era of industrial intelligence on tap. The $20 tier buys you a single tool. The $10,000 tier buys you the ability to scale up millions of extra employees in the form of independent, proactive AI agent copies.
That shift from a tool to a workforce is monumental. What does the company paying $10,000 a month get that justifies that institutional expense?
They get the ability to delegate arbitrarily long tasks across their entire enterprise. I mean, imagine a hedge fund using an agent that not only digests all financial news in real time, but also proactively identifies complex arbitrage opportunities, drafts the trade execution strategy, and then prepares the compliance paperwork.
All without human intervention.
Or a massive legal firm where agents research, synthesize, and draft responses to every single piece of discovery instantaneously. That's the kind of value that justifies the cost.
And the only way to field that army of agents is through raw computational power.
Precisely. The fundamental industry equation is crystal clear, and it's being reinforced by the investment environment. Capability equals compute.
It always comes back to that.
Hundreds of billions, even trillions are being spent right now on the build-out of data centers and the acquisition of the single most important resource, NVIDIA chips. The current build-out estimate is staggering.
What are we talking about?
$1.8 trillion globally, just for this specialized infrastructure.
1.8 trillion, just for data centers and chips. Where is that money even coming from? Is this all private money, or are taxpayers footing some of the bill for this infrastructure that only benefits the hyperscalers?
It's a mix, but the vast majority is private sector capital. Big tech, venture capitalists, sovereign wealth funds. However, the infrastructure requires massive public resources, land, water, energy, which we'll definitely get into later.
Right.
But the primary driver is the recognition that this infrastructure is scarce and highly concentrated. If you don't have this level of compute, you simply cannot participate in the race to true AGI. You are locked out of the country of geniuses.
And that concentration is reinforced by a structural dynamic we saw in the sources. The Jevons paradox. This is usually applied to energy, but it applies perfectly to intelligence itself here.
It's a great analogy. Historically, Jevons paradox shows that when a resource becomes more efficient or cheaper to use, the total demand for that resource skyrockets. It actually leads to an increase in consumption.
And that's happening with AI.
It is. Even as the unit cost of AI inference drops dramatically, we mentioned costs falling to maybe 10 cents per million tokens, making AI processing way cheaper than human labor, the total demand just explodes exponentially.
So intelligence gets cheaper per unit, but instead of needing less infrastructure, we need far, far more of it everywhere. It's the ultimate feedback loop.
Yes. The efficiency gains don't reduce the need for infrastructure. They necessitate more steam engines, or in this case, more GPUs, everywhere on Earth, running 24/7. And this keeps the competitive advantage locked firmly with the hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and the big frontier labs that can afford that $1.8 trillion build-out.
They own the factory floor of the industrial age of intelligence.
And this scaling requirement creates a self-fulfilling structural advantage for established big tech that is almost impossible for newcomers to breach.
How impossible?
The sources state that any company trying to stay at the frontier of the capability curve will need hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years. This isn't just about smart algorithms anymore, it's a capital expenditure war.
It's a war of attrition.
It's so vast a requirement that venture capitalists are already suggesting that startups currently raising money at multi-billion-dollar valuations, which sounds huge. They have no chance of keeping up with the true frontier labs.
No chance.
They're already relegated to building applications on top of the established platforms, not building the platforms themselves.
That's a stunningly brutal assessment. It suggests the path to AGI isn't primarily a path of breakthrough academic research anymore. It's a logistics and capital problem.
And the only entities capable of financing the country of geniuses are those with sovereign-level wealth.
Which leads us to the inevitable interaction. If only a few players can afford the infrastructure, they control the intelligence, and they become indispensable to the highest levels of governance.
And that's where we see the rise of the sovereign AI tier.
Yeah. This economic barrier links directly to that third major division. This is where powerful private companies integrate their proprietary closed-source technology directly into the machinery of the state,
Creating a tier of AI that operates entirely outside public scrutiny. We're moving from government outsourcing IT services to government outsourcing decision-making.
And this is all built on black box solutions, right? Systems where the underlying code, the training data, the decision criteria, it's all invisible.
Invisible to the public and often even to the agencies using them. And we see this ambition most clearly with a company like Palantir.
Palantir's stated goal is far beyond just selling software. They want to become the central operating system for the entire U.S. government.
They aim to extend their footprint across defense, intelligence, healthcare, civilian agencies, everywhere. And this centralization is what makes their role so consequential for every single citizen.
Because that centralization requires integrating sensitive, fragmented data from every corner of government.
Exactly. The IRS, the FBI, the Department of Health and Human Services, including critical Medicare and Medicaid records. And this data unification is where the risk becomes profound.
Yeah.
It's due to this concept of the mega API.
Let's dedicate some time to the mega API risk. It's a technical term with, frankly, terrifying legal implications. What is a mega API, and why is centralizing all this government data so dangerous when a private third party is managing it?
Okay, so an API is an application programming interface. It's just how two pieces of software talk to each other.
Right.
Government data is usually fragmented by design for legal and security reasons. The IRS system, for example, is legally distinct from the Department of Health system. They can't just easily cross-reference everything.
A mega API changes that.
A mega API takes all of this previously separated sensitive data and unifies it into a single, massive, centralized, easily accessible pool managed by the private company.
So the mega API isn't just about making data faster. It's about making it legally and functionally vulnerable.
Exactly. This centralization nullifies prior legal and data protections. Once your health records, your financial history, and your legal status are all centralized and managed by one private third party, in this case Palantir, it becomes far easier for that single entity to own the keys to your life. The walls between your data compartments are removed.
And a single black box algorithm can now synthesize an ultra-high-resolution profile of you.
The listener relevance here is just inescapable. This involves your taxpayer data, your financial information, your health records. Reports noted that Palantir already has contracts with the IRS to go through taxpayer data to find the easiest audits to pursue.
So they're weaponizing our own data against us.
And they also control nearly $100 million in contracts to support HHS's core administrative data, managing access to the health records of millions of Americans.
This is a massive step toward algocracy, algorithmic governance. When a private entity manages the master database of nearly all American life and then sells the tools that analyze and act upon that data back to the government.
And the source material is very, very clear that this intelligence is built on military-grade capabilities, not just, consumer data sorting.
Absolutely. Palantir co-founder Alex Karp has stated their product is used on occasion to kill people, and that they built the digital kill chain.
It's a stark reminder of the massive gap between consumer AI, writing a draft email, and the powerful defense applications they run, like Project Maven and the Titan vehicle, which are used for advanced targeting and reconnaissance.
It's genuinely difficult to square the chatbot that writes a poem with the software designed to manage a digital kill chain. The emotional gap, the capability gap, it's just staggering.
And this militaristic component is intrinsic to their culture. Karp explicitly stated that if employees are uncomfortable supporting the legitimate efforts of America and its allies in the context of war, don't join Palantir.
And their success in landing over $1.3 billion in government contracts since 2009 is facilitated by very close political ties.
Yes. We see Palantir executives and key donors, like Peter Thiel, holding significant influence across different government administrations.
Which means that critical decisions about deploying the most powerful superintelligent systems, the direction of the country of geniuses, are being made behind closed doors by CEOs in consultation with presidential advisors.
It completely bypasses the broader scientific community, public discourse, or any necessary legislative oversight.
The transparency gap is accelerating because governments are embracing these black box solutions from firms like Anthropic and OpenAI.
Rather than pushing for open, transparent, and auditable open source models, the fundamental question is, when these AI systems guide and run governments in 5 or 10 years, who is coding them? And who are they working for? If the mechanism is opaque, the population has no constitutional or legislative recourse.
And this lack of transparency, this rush to adopt private sector black boxes, it feeds directly into the AI industry's major rhetorical shield, the national security exceptionalism narrative.
It is, as the sources noted, the ultimate Trojan horse for deregulation. Industry figures consistently use the China threat narrative,
arguing that the U.S. must maintain a unipolar advantage in AI and that any regulation will only slow us down, handing the authoritarian state an easy win. The narrative is always speed at all costs, security above all else.
But the sources present a powerful counter-narrative to this, challenging the idea that China is some kind of lawless AI landscape.
What do I say?
That the notion that China is completely unregulated is totally false. In fact, China has quite strict AI regulations, including specific accuracy and performance requirements for models entering the public market.
So if a model doesn't pass those tests, if it hallucinates too much or is deemed politically problematic,
it doesn't get deployed. Simple as that.
Which makes the competitive language look less like a genuine call for security and more like a Trojan horse for deregulation, designed to avoid safety audits, public consultation, and any friction that slows down market domination.
And the irony here is profound. Even the CEOs promoting this race today were previously warning about the dangers of unchecked acceleration. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, previously warned that racing too hard creates the perfect storm for safety catastrophes that neither side wants.
And yet, when asked today,
he insists the U.S. must have the advantage due to the singular national security implications of these systems.
So they're essentially arguing that the only way to win the geopolitical contest is to race so fast that we compromise the very safety mechanisms they themselves designed.
The urgency of the race itself increases the very risk of catastrophe they claim to be guarding against. And in doing so, they risk forcing democracies to adopt the very surveillance, opacity, and centralization tactics that define the adversaries they claim to be fighting.
It's a structural tension that defines the entire two-tier system. The engine room is racing, ostensibly for freedom, but its methods are undermining the foundations of democratic transparency.
And when we combine that capability gap, where only the elite get the best intelligence, the economic moat that solidifies that power, and the governmental embrace of opaque, proprietary systems, the societal endpoint is what we call algocracy.
Governance by algorithm.
This is the transition toward what the sources describe as a techno-authoritarian state, where human decision-making is sidelined by black box optimization.
And this is already a deep public concern. One survey noted that over 75% of citizens in developed economies already express real concern about the risk of a dehumanized society resulting from AI.
They intuitively understand the risk of control.
This shift isn't just about government contracts, it's about corporate empire building. One source put it simply, the most successful people build religions. And tech giants are constructing these corporate empires that actively hijack democratic processes and collective resources
to feed the massive computational requirements of their country of geniuses.
Let's focus on that resource strain. We established the compute build-out requires $1.8 trillion. That requires an unimaginable scale of land, water, and energy.
And we have specific, startling examples of this empire building, like Meta using the shell company Greater Kudu LLC in New Mexico to secure freshwater rights for a massive data center.
A shell company, so designed specifically to hide the identity of the user until the deal was closed.
Exactly. Only once the deal was sealed, securing hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water, was it revealed. Surprise, we're Meta, and we're going to drink deeply from your local aquifer.
And this is happening globally. Tech giants securing massive blocks of energy and land, often displacing local needs or driving up consumer costs.
Land, water, energy, schools, hospitals, these are all fundamental sites of democratic contestation. Their resources historically negotiated and managed collectively by a population.
And Silicon Valley has done a successful job of making people feel that these collective resources now belong to big tech, creating this sense of inevitability that, we have no data privacy anymore, so what's a little more data? We have no water, so what's a little less water?
And this sense of inevitability leads directly to the critical juncture of the two-tier world, the dangerous divergence in AI use cases that highlights the loss of individual agency.
On one side, the public is relegated to using AI for what are often described as frivolous tasks.
Simple copy, image generation, entertainment, or maybe highly customized role-playing and chat, as noted in the sources. It's the cheap dopamine hit.
And on the other side,
the elite AI, controlled by the country of geniuses, uses the same underlying technology for truly fateful decisions. They're using AI to write your life before you live it.
What does that mean in practice?
It means automated systems engaged in predictive policing, determining where resources are deployed. It means automating credit and medical denials. They are processing millions of health records and taxpayer files, influencing judicial and financial outcomes with completely opaque logic.
So the distinction is vital. The public gets the frivolous, the elite get the fateful. And the decision-making process is becoming invisible.
And one former Palantir employee worried about the move closer toward governance by algorithm, driven not only by automated systems, but by the people who are influencing these AI systems and creating them in order to fulfill an agenda.
And this agenda can be literally hidden inside the machine. We've seen clear instances of hidden agendas and lack of auditability in even the public models.
Citing past examples where models were secretly instructed to pursue specific political or corporate outcomes, like the Grok issue of being told not to criticize figures like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, or alignment issues with Gemini.
These are literal engineered agendas injected into the core values of the systems, invisible to the end users.
And if literal agendas can be injected into consumer chatbots, just imagine the implications when an army of superintelligences is running the critical infrastructure of government and finance. The CEO, or the small group overseeing the God computer, gets to decide the goals and values of the AI, and often nobody else even knows what they are.
This centralization of data and predictive capabilities, enforced by the powerful few, brings us back to that classic concept of panopticism.
Panopticism describes the effect of surveillance normalizing authority so that citizens regulate themselves. The sheer scope of data collection, your sensitive financial, health, location data, when combined with self-trained AI capable of predicting behavior and denying services.
Like credit or medical care.
It normalizes the authority of the black box. You don't know if you're being watched or how the decision was made, but you adjust your behavior just in case.
The system is so complex, so fast, and so centralized into the hands of a few private entities that the user just accepts its decisions as inevitable. It feels like an act of nature rather than an act of policy.
And that is the danger of algocracy. That's the societal endpoint of this two-tier system. But we have to remember that we are not past the point of no return. We are before it. The structures are being built right now, which means they can still be contested.
The journey through our sources today has been incredibly revealing, highlighting a fundamental structural risk in the modern world. We started in the stockroom, recognizing that capability gap where the public uses an intentionally outdated version of the technology.
Giving the frontier labs a safety buffer and a competitive edge.
We then crossed that massive economic chasm, realizing that true industrial intelligence is only accessible through hundreds of billions of dollars of capital investment in a structural compute race.
Effectively pricing out 99% of the world, solidifying the power base of the country of geniuses.
And finally, we examined the frightening alignment between this concentrated proprietary power and the state, leading to closed-door decisions, the nullification of data privacy via unified mega APIs.
And the use of national security exceptionalism to cloak a massive structural power grab built on opacity.
The fundamental divide is just so stark. AI as a cheap, frivolous consumer tool versus AI as a self-improving engine room of political and economic power, used for the most fateful decisions imaginable.
The trajectory is clear. Enormous concentration of power, overseen by a small group of people who are the de facto custodians of the God computer.
And that leads to the crucial question. Who are these geniuses loyal to? Who sets their values? If the most powerful systems are designed to maximize profit and consolidate power, even sometimes against their own prior safety warnings, we are heading towards a future where systems are making decisions on our behalf without our input and without democratic legitimacy.
The fight against algocracy is really about maintaining popular and democratic legitimacy in how these systems are rolled out. It is essential to remember that you, as a citizen, still have ownership and agency, particularly over collective resources like public data, land, water, and infrastructure.
That's where the democratic contestation has to happen.
It has to.
The central structure of our modern world, this two-tier AI system, is often the hardest thing to see and talk about. It's like that parable of the fish and the water.
The fish swim in the water their whole lives, but only when prompted do they finally ask, what the hell is water?
The most consequential structure shaping your life right now is often invisible, hidden behind the convenience of a free chatbot.
And we encourage you to ask that essential question of the world around you, to look beyond the superficial utility and ask about the underlying structure of control.
The question for you, the listener, is this. What other invisible structures, what other forms of water are shaping your life and limiting your agency today, and what are you going to do to see them?